so much for once again having our students here for the audience. As you know, Emory Tibet Science Initiative began in 2008, and we started the Tibetan Mind-Body Science program in 2009 to facilitate the exchange between the modern science and the Tibetan science of mind and the medicine to some extent to facilitate with the monks and nuns who were studying modern science here in Dharamsala and bringing the undergraduate from Emory University. And it has been a great privilege, once in a lifetime experience for all our students over the years. And once again, we have 19 students here. This year, they will be studying here for three weeks, about 3 weeks, and then they will be going down to South India at Drepung, where they will interface with the monks studying modern science there for 3 weeks there. And we have 5 or so questions for the students. But before that, I would like to request some word of advice for our students.
Of course, firstly, my greetings. Then, I think interest showing by the students of some universities, not particularly Emory universities. It seems now, year by year, not only continue, but also you see more and more people are showing interest. And particularly very young, bright student. So I often use it telling people, you see, the generations of 20th century and generation of 21st century. So we, I think, including you most probably, generation of 20th century. Then me, of course, there's no question. So 20th century already gone. Now 21st century, this moment is just the beginning of 21st century. About 14 years passed. The remaining not yet come. So future, always possible, some change. Like weather condition is, I think beyond our control. But certainly, obviously, man-made problem, violence, war, huge gap rich and poor, and even the violence in the name of religion. That man-made problem. So we human beings have the responsibility. And logically, all these problems we created. So we also have the ability to reduce that. Finally, to eliminate that kind of problem. So therefore, you, generation of 21st century, very, very important. I always telling, wherever I meet people. And just I mentioned your professor, America, the leading nation of free world, and in technology and science, many innovation come from America. So now, some sort of new way of thinking about 7 billion human beings on the basis of sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. And one Indian. You are Indian. You from Pakistan?
I'm actually half Indian, half Pakistani.
Huh? Half.
Half Indian, half Pakistan.
Oh, that's good. Then you have, I think, better opportunity to bring together India and Pakistan. This actually culturally or religiously also, you see, the Muslim number, India is much bigger than Pakistan. I think after Indonesia, India is the biggest sort of number of Muslim, like that. No problem. Yeah. So sometimes I jokingly is telling people, the Pakistanis, the Shia people, better to come to India, more safer. In any way. So India as well, I think the most populated democratic country, now 1.2 billion populated sort of nation, recent election. I think very, except there's a few problems, otherwise very smoothly. I think that's, greatness of India. So in any way, so America, leading nation of free world. India, most populated democratic country. So these two nations, I think India, I think 1,000 years, you see, this knowledge about mind, about emotion. Usually I call ancient Indian psychology. It's all these sort of knowledge invented in India, not in Tibet. We simply carry the ancient Indian sort of rich knowledge about psychology or these things. So we simply, you see, kept over 1,000 years. So therefore, you Indian, really, and then because of, you see, India, I think over 3,000 years, the tradition of ahimsa, non-violence. With that, religious harmony. These are something living in this country. Quite a complicated nation, but as far as non-violence principle, and religious harmony is concerned, still kept here. So since religious harmony in this most populated nation, most populated democratic nation, you see, can preserve. So then why not rest of the world can follow that? If religious harmony never happened, just only because of idle way, then difficult. But India is the living example of religious harmony. So in any way, so you are particularly the people from 21st century's generation now showing these sort of matter, showing interest about this matter. I really feel very, very encouraging.
I speak for all of my fellow students when I share how grateful we are to be able to come to Dharamsala and receive a very special class with our most cherished Emory professor. This morning, Your Holiness, we arrived only a few days ago to Dharamsala for our summer program, and we have not yet formally begun our classes. Although we have read some of your books...
Okay.
We have not yet formally begun our classes, though we have read some of your books in preparation for our 5-week-long summer course. Most of us are very new students to Buddhism. From what we have read, it is refreshing for us to hear Your Holiness emphasize the importance of compassion as a basic human value that is crucial for the flourishing and survival of humanity. In Western culture, however, sometimes compassion comes across as timid. A famous Western philosopher, Kant, has even said that compassion is beautiful, but it is weak. In this sense, compassion is seen as an ineffective way to deal with people who have been abusive and destructive, such as Hitler or Mao. We would like to hear your whole... We would like to hear Your Holiness's explanation of how we can cultivate compassion toward destructive people while still preventing them from committing further negative acts.
So that's now, last several years, see, some group, including some scientists, and including some scientists from Emory University. Now, see, we concluded a lot of problems which I mentioned before. Actually, you see, due to too much sort of self-centered attitude, I, or we, and clear demarcation, they and we. That's the basis of violence. I often is telling, now for example, here, I'm first level, I'm a human being. I think furthermore, first level, I'm sentient being. Second level, I'm human being. Third level, I'm Buddhist. Fourth level, I'm Tibetan. Fifth level, I'm Dalai Lama. So, the important is, human level is more important. So when we look human level, all your enemy, all your sort of the troublemaker are human beings. We have to live together on this small planet. So that, I think Syria problem, and now recently the Ukraine problem, now all this, and the Chinese, you see their relation with Japan, Vietnam, all this. In a way, not very serious matter, but too much emphasis, we and they. Then these are problems will start. So compassion means sense of concern of others. This is nothing to do with religion. If you too much, if people, I think those people who consider compassion is something because of the weak, then you must mention God. Look, God, full of compassion. Can you say God also weak? Those people you see who believe because of the creator, theistic religion, that God is creator. We all created by God. So we all have the spark of God. So God means infinite love. So you cannot say God is weak. Isn't it? So then scientific research. Number of my scientific sort of friend, scientist friend, or scientific researcher, they say constant fear, constant anger, hatred, actually eating our immune system. Calm mind, very good for our health. The basis of one of the fundamentals of the element for calm mind is self-confidence. More self-centered attitude, less self-confidence, fear, distrust. More compassionate mind, open your heart. Then you get more self-confidence. So these are, again now India, over 3,000 years, the concept of secular ethics. And modern India's constitution based on secularism. Why? India, multi-religious nation. So concept of ethics, if based on religion, then complications there. So secular ethics is very realistic. So we are making effort, promotion of secular ethics through secular way, not based on religion. So then the essence of secular ethics is sense of concern of others' well-being. That's compassion. Clear? So I think out of ignorance, you see people feel, oh, compassion, something weak, and anger brings energy. I love a former president, Mr. Bush. Since our first meeting, immediately we become a genuine friend, as I mentioned earlier. I always, whenever I meet with people, firstly I look human level. And human level, Mr. Bush, a wonderful person. I think he never was thinking importance of presidency way, like that. When we met in I think White House, we immediately, developed human relations. Wonderful. So I love him. Then some of his policy, like Iraq policy, based on concept of we and they. At that time, I think the advisors or policymakers in the White House, they felt Saddam Hussein just one person, all troublemaker, one person. So if that removed, everything okay. Once is used force, then even those people, who disagree or who complain about Iraq, also then maybe more unite. So that's the reason. Is use force actually create more hatred here, more anger. So that's the source of trouble. So when the September 11th happened, the next day, 12th September, I wrote a letter because I know him. So I expressed my sort of sad and condolence to those people, those families. Meantime, I also express, I hope this problem may handle by non-violent way. So his motivation, I know, very good motivation. Concern Iraqi people under totalitarian system. Very good motivation, and bring freedom, democracy. But method, use force. So that unexpected sort of complications start. Now, the BBC is mentioned the Obama visit Afghanistan. Some sort of expression of sort of appreciation of those U.S. sort of army. So still is a problem. And Iraq also is a lot of problem. And then Afghanistan. All these are clearly sort of clearly shows any violent method, no matter what motivation or what positive goal, a method is wrong. So violence comes from hatred or anger or suspicion, distrust. So non-violence means sense of concern of others' well-being, respect their right, respect their life. Then non-violence comes, dialogue comes. So emotion, the mental level, the source of violence is anger, mainly. And source of non-violence is compassion. I think even animal, loves non-violence. I think not love, I think violence. We human beings, we use our intelligence wrong way, short-sighted, narrow-minded. Then too much emotion. Then, I killed that. I feel happy. I have victory. Short-sighted, narrow-minded. Fail properly use our intelligence. So now here, the promotion of secular ethics, not from teaching or preaching, but through education. So that's why our program, Emory University's program, is extremely important, like that. Next question?
Tashi Dalai, Your Holiness,
Tashi Dalai,
we are so appreciative of the fact that you're able to teach us on this day. Your Holiness, Our program here is focused on the Tibetan mind-body sciences, and as part of the program, we will be interacting with the monks who will be studying modern science at Drepung Monastery later this summer. We understand that this is the first time in the 600-year-old curriculum that modern science education will be integrated into the Tibetan monastic institutions. And we know that this has been a long-standing dream of your holinesses. We would like to hear your thoughts on what practical contributions you envision this initiative will make towards advancing human knowledge. Tudeje.
Personally, I would like to ask one question. Why you use Tibetan body and Tibetan mind? Why? Tibet?
Body mind sciences.
Tibetan syllabus.
Tibetan body mind sciences. They Nanda Ripada they
Oh.
Swar Dweke Swar Nanda Ripada.
I don't know. Sounds a little bit strange. If that strictly speaking about that, I got this impression. Oh, Tibetan body means you see one because of birthmark. That's something special for Tibetan and Mongolian, not American, I think. At that mental level, there's no differences. In any way, because the word, I don't know. Maybe relevant. You see, when about 30 years, since 30 years, you see, I developed a serious dialogue with scientists. Then initially, some sort of the scientist and also the organizer, you see, used the word dialogue between Buddhism and modern science. Then I made correction. This is wrong. We are not discussing about Buddhism with science. No. What we discuss with scientists is Buddhist science. In Buddhism, it's a Buddhist way also to practice is use our intelligence, use full knowledge about emotion, the system of emotion. Through that way, transform about our emotion. So, a lot of explanation about emotion. How to handle these emotions, also mentioned there. So therefore, a lot of explanation about emotion. Actually, ancient Indian sort of psychology, very, very rich. So I think, unfortunately, I always, how many Indians are here? You also. You Indian or mixture?
Both my parents are Indian, but I was born in Hong Kong.
Oh, Hong Kong. So, say, I always describe Indians are traditionally our guru, our teacher. We simply student. All our knowledge come from Nalanda tradition. So our guru, eventually, of course, some other factors also there, but somehow you neglected about your own traditional knowledge about mind, these things. We Chela, you know, Chela, guru and Chela, student. We Chela, you see, faithfully kept this knowledge. So sometimes I describe we are quite a reliable Chela of Indian guru. While guru, you see, somehow, you see, they forget these things we still kept. So in any way, so therefore, I just mentioned, you see, usually we say Buddhist science and modern science. If you use religion, then should include about next life, about some of these mysterious things. That's beyond science, and also will not cover 7 billion human beings. Our secular sort of ethics aiming how to bring compassionate mind into 7 billion human beings. not through religion, but through education, based on scientific research and our own experience and common sense. Like that. So now, our monastic institution, Tibetan monastic institution, as I mentioned earlier, we kept this Nalanda rich thought, not through prayer, not through simple meditation, or simply to change dress. We, 20, 30, 40 years rigorous study. Through that way we kept. In ancient Nalanda tradition, Nalanda, not just one monastery where they carry pujas or the offerings where? Okay. Rituals. Not that. Nalanda is actually academic center. So at that time, all the existing Indian knowledge, study in the university, Nalanda University. So usually I describe these Nalanda masters, I usually describe as a professors of Nalanda institution. Really, these are, when you, I think, you will know if you study text wrote by these Nalanda masters. Oh, really? Like quantum physics, 2,500 years ago, already found the concept of quantum physics. So therefore, you see, these are really academicians, right? Plus Buddhist, because of the Buddhist monk, Buddhist practitioner. So now, modern time, science, very important. Therefore, in our subject for study, on the basis of individual sort of interest, we should include study of science. That's the main reason. So our academic should be modernized. So should modernize means include modern knowledge. That's mainly science. Next question.
It is an honor to be here in your presence. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and thank you for giving us the chance to ask you questions. Your Holiness, many of us, although not Buddhist, resonate strongly with Buddhist teachings and Buddhist philosophy, particularly through writings of Your Holiness. Many people in the West, while retaining their own religions, identify strongly with Buddhism, such as Jewish Buddhists or Jew-Bus. Likewise, many of us are at a point in our lives where we are questioning our own faiths or exploring other faiths to try and find a spiritual path that resonates most strongly with us. We are hoping to hear Your Holiness's thoughts as to whether it is possible to practice Buddhism purely as a philosophy and not as a religion, and when practiced as a religion, to what extent is Buddhism compatible with other religions? Your Holiness, what do you think makes someone a Buddhist? Tujuje.
Some, my Christian friend, late Kasangju, Ka, Marmamare, Vain, Ka, Vain Odi, a Catholic monk, wonderful monk. And then also, one time I met, I think in England, I met Harsa, the Komporjiori, in any way. So some Christian brothers actually practice some of the Buddhist method about promotion of compassion and promotion of forgiveness and also single-pointed meditation. These things common, so no problem. Then one day, the Catholic monk, wonderful monk, she really sort of staunch supporter about Tibetan just cause. One day he asked me about emptiness. Then I told him, don't ask that. That's not your business. That's Buddhist business. So therefore, some sort of unique thing, everything, you see, due to law of causality, no creator. These things, Buddhist concept, not necessary to Kasota, accept these things. Person who feel the concept of creator is very sort of something alive and something very effective, then should practice that. The common practice, you can practice. Okay. Last year, I was in South India, Bangalore. One of the great Hindu masters, spiritual leaders, he really carried sort of immense sort of help to thousands of students. Meal, wonderful. And then we have some talk, and I told him the practice of three training, or conduct, because moral conduct, and single-pointed mind, and wisdom. Sanskrit word, shila, shamatha, parinja. So I told him, this practice is common practice. Now unique thing is Atma and Anatma, independent soul or self, no independent sort of self. So that's the differences. And then I told him, Hinduism and Buddhism basically like twin brothers, sisters. All these basic practice is the same. Then unique thing is because of non-soul theory, or non-soul and soul theory. So that's our private business. You believe soul is better, so that's your business. I believe non-soul, that is helpful to me, so that's my business. So these are private business, no problem. We should not argue, you should believe, you say, non-soul. Useless. You should, Christian. One time I was in Paris, on I think Archbishop or something in Paris. You see, he tried to convince he tried to convince me the concept of creator. Of course, I listened very politely, but then in deep inside I felt useless, useless effort. So I never try, you see, to bring conviction about some Buddhist unique thing. Useless. Whether we like it or not, these major world major religious tradition will remain another at least a few centuries or even 1,000 years. It's better. Different mental disposition, some different way of approach. After all you see, teach us practice of compassion, love, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment. So that's more problem. That's more important. Method, just a method. Not much sort of a problem. Not much important. Where? This I feel. Like that. Now, your question.
Your Holiness, I, along my fellow peers, am filled with so much joy, and I'm so grateful for you today sharing your wisdom with us. We've learned that you identify with Marxism in principle, although not necessarily in the way that Marxism has been put into practice around the world. And we also know that you recently attended a symposium at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., which is seen as the conservative think tank whose philosophy is based on individualism and capitalism. From Your Holiness's writings, we understand that intention plays a very major role in determining the success of capitalism and Marxism, despite their fundamental differences. We ask you, Your Holiness, how can we inspire people to cultivate the right intention to make either of these systems work for society?
Main reason So my sort of also the attraction, Marxism is, so in his writing, he emphasizes equal distribution and importance of working class people's right. That's moral principle there. Whereas capitalism only talk how to make profit. But then, in practical level, those socialist country, suppose follower of Karl Marx, a lot of corruptions. I think too much centralized authority. I don't think that's Marxism. I usually make distinction, Leninism, Marxism. I totally against the Leninism. So these socialist countries, their economy, or I think because lack of freedom of individual, the freedom, because of that, the human creativity somehow checked. So in many fields, it's just to wait order from top leader. So, very harmful, totalitarian sort of system. So the capitalism, I think initiative must come from individual. Therefore, emphasis importance of individual sort of creativity. So that's right. But then, as I mentioned earlier, you see, just concerned about one's own interest, not other sort of well-being. That's not necessarily the capitalism's that not necessarily the capitalist sort of also the stand or viewpoint. Capitalism simply is thinking about money, about economy. So soon after Eastern European countries become freedom, then Czechoslovakia. So late President Havel, invited me. So I went there. So there I expressed, now their nation, the socialism somehow like Soviet Union, stagnation. So somehow fail. Then Western capitalism, pure capitalism, not yet start. So you can find some synthesized sort of system, some good things based on moral principle about socialism. That should keep. Then capitalist sort of dynamic sort of movement, and bring something. So some kind of synthesize. I express, but nobody. You see, they seriously, I think, thinking these things. Then recently, you mentioned, you see, that organization in Washington. I accepted to visit there to participate in discussion. Some people, you see, express their concern. That's a rightist organization. I should not, you see, participate there. Then actually, when I was there, I mentioned capitalism or rightist also for humanity, for people, for America. The socialist, they're also for people. So leftist or left or right, that's simply, you see, simply method, and it's wrong. You see, there's too much emotion. I am socialist, I am leftist, I am rightist. It's wrong. And the emotion is involved. So should think. You see, I believe socialism. So from socialist sort of concept, how much I make is a contribution for betterment of the people. The capitalism also, you see, use the capitalist method, make the maximum contribution for for the society. So no problem. All system meant for people, meant for sort of good thing. So sometimes the people, now I think religious also. I often is telling people, I'm Buddhist. We should think how much I can contribute from my own tradition to betterment of the world. Never thinking propagate Buddhism. So similarly, Christianity, Islam, you should think how much I can contribute. Not thinking so propagate. Right? So we too much the emotion. So rightist, leftist, that also sometimes you see emotionally say we are rightist. So some of these people, they are socialist or leftist. So Dalai Lama as a Marxist, so should not participate that. There's not much meaning. Like that, I think better to come together and discuss what is false or defect way, false way, false or drawbacks about existing American capitalist system, and how much you can sort of take from socialist sort of practice, and then those socialist country, including China. Now China no longer socialist, but the former Soviet Union, socialist, and many Eastern European countries, socialist. But you see, they face some what we call stagnation. So what was wrong? Discuss. Like that. So that's my view. So I, Buddhist monk, socio-economy theory is concerned, I am Marxist. So it is wrong, Marxist telling to capitalist American. As either you or someone has mentioned now, better to fight. I'm Marxist, you are capitalist. Like that.
Ashidere.
Yesterday.
Your Holiness, it is an incredible honor to be with you today.
Oh.
Your life and work are an inspiration to us all. In this age of science and technology, there are laboratories that are cloning animals. In principle, we can conceive of an age where we could clone a human being from his or her DNA. According to Buddhist tradition, if 2 or 3 humans were cloned from one person's DNA, would they all share the same consciousness that the original person had? Or would each one have a different consciousness? And if so, where would these consciousnesses come from? Thank you.
That I think, obviously, you see, mind is own continuation. So, physically, like twins, right? Physically, some similarities, and then clone, I think even more similarity, but still different sort of emotions, different mind. Recently I was in Japan, some discussion with Japanese scientists and also some mind life, scientists from Mind Life Institution also there. So one Japanese, he believed the robots are robot, very much sort of believe robot. So eventually robot eventually can develop a robot can show affection. And I express doubt. So from Buddhist viewpoint, of course, I think if you sort of accept, or if you understand the very nature of consciousness or mind, and momentarily changing, so it must come from its own previous substantial causes. So go that if we accept beginning of consciousness, and that consciousness without substantial cause. Matter never can be substantial cause of consciousness. consciousness never can be substantial cause of matter. So two things different. So we call sentient being. A being with consciousness, that we call sentient being. Life, of course, mindless, because the life also is there. These trees or all these, life is there. And germs, or germs are particles. I think original also because of brains, particle, and then matter sort of, stones sort of particle. And it's very, very subtle level, not much differences. But then gradually, and certain sort of particles develop, can be basis of consciousness. Then life come, life or because of the consciousness come. So sentient being becomes sentient being. So that's the main sort of way to approach existence of previous life, like that. Then, because on the basis of the continuation and the substantial cause, like that. So, finished now. Thank you.